This movie, The Old Woman with a Knife, is an action thriller. The wind, a razor of ice, had clawed at Hornclaw's bare feet until she couldn't feel them anymore. She had stumbled from the forest, a ghost of a girl, and collapsed in the dirt lot of a roadside diner. It was there, amidst the greasy smell of fried food and the low hum of the fluorescent lights, that she was found by a kind couple, the owners. They brought her in, a wisp of a child, half frozen and starving. They gave her a cot, hot soup that burned a path down her throat, and a job washing dishes. It was a life, a quiet, repetitive rhythm of steam and soap that offered a fragile shield from the world she'd escaped. In the diner's corner booth, she often saw him, a man named Ryu. He was a puzzle wrapped in a trench coat, with a silence that spoke volumes. He would appear for a few days, his eyes watchful and distant, and then vanish without a trace, only to reappear weeks later. Hornclaw was drawn to his solitude, to the air of secrets that clung to him like a second skin. One night, after the diner had closed, a soldier, his face red with drink, cornered her in the back. He grabbed her, his breath foul, his intentions clear. Something snapped inside Hornclaw. She fought back, a desperate flurry of fear and adrenaline, and when it was over, the soldier was dead, a silent heap on the floor. She stared at her hands, shaking, stained with a life she'd taken. When Ryu returned, he didn't look at her with disgust or judgment. He looked at her with a chilling understanding. He told her about his past, of a world hidden in the shadows, and of a clandestine organization of assassins that targeted the pests of society, the rapists, the murderers, the corrupt officials who preyed on the innocent. He saw in her not a killer, but a survivor with a primal instinct for justice. From that day on, he trained her, transforming her from a frightened girl into a cold-blooded killer. She proved a prodigy, a force of nature with an unnatural talent for death. Over the decades, she became a legend, a phantom responsible for more hits than anyone else in the organization. 45 years later, Hornclaw was no longer a girl. She was an old woman, her face a roadmap of a lifetime of violence and solitude. Within the organization, she was known simply as Grandma. She was an icon, a living myth, but her life was a profound, aching loneliness. She wore a white wig and unassuming clothes, a deliberate disguise to appear harmless, to ensure no one would ever get close enough to see the killer beneath. It was a life of emotional starvation, a self-imposed exile from the warmth of human connection. But the cold, hard walls she had built around herself began to crack. She found a shivering, injured dog in a cold garage, its eyes mirroring her own weary loneliness. Against every instinct, she took it to a veterinarian, a kind man named Dr. Kong. He told her the dog was too old for a shelter and would likely be euthanized. In that old dog's eyes, she saw her own mortality, her own impending obsolescence. She took the dog home, a cynical joke playing on her lips as she named it Burden, a wry acknowledgement of their shared status as elderly, abandoned creatures. Meanwhile, the organization she had dedicated her life to had changed. It had fallen under the control of a corrupt director, a man named Sun, who used the company as a front for a lucrative drug mafia. He assigned hits based on profit, not justice, and the veterans, the true believers, began to push back. Jang, a young assassin whom Hornclaw had mentored, refused a hit on a humanitarian and made a careless mistake during another. Sun, without a second thought, ordered his elimination. Hornclaw volunteered for the job, a grim duty she felt she owed her student. But as she cornered him in a grimy alley, a young, reckless assassin named Tu intervened. He was a whirlwind of violent youth, taunting her, calling her too old and slow to finish the job. He left her with a kill, but for the first time in her career, Hornclaw hesitated. She saw in Jang's eyes not a target, but a young man she had trained, a life she had shaped. Seeing her moment of weakness, Jang, resigned to his fate, forced her hand, plunging her knife into his own neck. Wounded in the scuffle, Hornclaw collapsed, the pain a searing fire. Through a haze of red and black, she saw the ghost of Ryu, his face etched with disappointment. "You hesitated," he admonished, "and now you are hurt." She was found by Dr. Kong, his gentle hands a stark contrast to the life she had lived. He bandaged her wounds, a touch that brought back a flood of memories of Ryu's own tender care decades ago. The incident was a seismic shock to her rigid, isolated world. Her new attachments to Burden, Dr. Kong, and his daughter, Hani, had made her vulnerable. Two, who had been secretly tracking her, discovered a detail that sent a cold wave of fury through him. Hornclaw had killed his father 25 years ago, a memory seared into his mind as a child. He was consumed by revenge. He began to exploit her weakness, threatening Kong and his family to force her out of retirement. Hornclaw was haunted by Ryu's last words to her before he left to avenge his family, a mission he never returned from. He had given her a hairpin and told her she could have no attachments if she was to survive as an assassin. She knew the truth of his words now more than ever. In a desperate, final measure, she drugged Tu's drink, drove him to a cliff overlooking a lake, and sent his car hurtling into the water. She believed it was over, but Tu, a survivor like her, had lived. He kidnapped Hani, a cruel, calculated move to draw her out. His demands were simple: meet him at Happy Park, a place of childhood memories. In a final, epic showdown, Hornclaw faced a team of mercenaries hired by Tuesday. She moved like a phantom, a legend of old, systematically eliminating them one by one, her body a testament to the decades of training and violence. The final confrontation with Tu was a brutal, desperate dance. He taunted her, his voice a venomous whisper, telling her she couldn't win because she had something to protect, while he had nothing to lose. But Hornclaw, with Hani's life on the line, had everything to lose. She outmaneuvered him, a lifetime of experience trumping his reckless youth, and plunged her knife into his chest. With his dying breath, Tu revealed the truth. He was the boy she had played with as a maid, the boy who had lost the only person who had ever shown him affection. Happy Park was a place they had promised to go together. His life had been a desperate attempt to get her attention, even through revenge. With the battle won, Hornclaw did not retire. She continued her work, but with a new sense of purpose. Her final act was not to kill a corrupt priest, but to expose his crimes by taking his records and diaries as evidence. She had evolved from a cold-blooded killer into a bringer of true justice, a grandmother with a purpose. She proved that as long as there were pests to be eliminated, Grandma couldn't stop. And the movie concludes.